Need help? Call our cybersecurity team and book a consultation with us today.
Okay, thanks for joining, everyone. We've got a pretty good topic this month. You can tell because I got the announcement out late, which is not too unusual for me, but we still got a pretty good turnout. And we had quite a few people RSVP as well, which usually means that we'll get a lot of people who bounce in and watch the subscription up on YouTube as well. So that's great. So we're going to be covering tonight the big announcement that came out kind of recently, maybe 2 months back, about being able to manage your Catalyst switches from your Meraki dashboard. Our speaker tonight is Mike Lipsey. Actually, I've known Mike for quite a while now. We were on an account together. Yeah, we were on an account together for some time. And he's a really great presenter. He's presented to SCUG a few times, I think. So really glad to have him back to go through this. With that being said, I'll turn this over to you, Mike. If you want to introduce yourself and take off with your information, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I have a presentation that I'll start with. And in my presentation, I will also do a lab. And just a moment. Okay. Let me know if you can't see my screen. As far as I can tell, everybody can see it. My name is Mike Lipsey. I'm a systems architect here in Southern California. I cover accounts for the Los Angeles Select region. I've been with Cisco for 12 years. I'm a CCIE and well, it was route switch, now it's enterprise architecture. And I've been with Cisco for 12 years. As Jason mentioned, that we've known each other that long. Because when I started, I was the SC on the Amgen account, and he works there quite a bit. And I'm happy to be here, happy to present this, the information for this announcement. So I have a pretty short deck that talks about, kind of the basics of this announcement. And then I'm going to do a demo where I actually bring a Catalyst 9300 into my Meraki dashboard and show you how simple it is. So please feel free to ask questions as we go. You can raise your hand on the app to interrupt me, or you can just wait for me to take a breath, which I'll try to do between slides. Like that. So why this? One of the things that we've often heard from customers is there going to be some, confluence between the traditional Cisco and Meraki cloud management? Answer's always been kind of, I don't know. And so now what we've done is we've brought we're starting to bring hardware parity between the two platforms together. And what that means is, like, if you look at some of the more advanced Meraki switches, like the MS390, it's based on much the same hardware as a Catalyst 9300, being that it's UADP 2.0. It's not exactly the same switch, but it is a very similar hardware, to the point where we're getting to where we can bring a Catalyst into the Meraki dashboard as an MS390. While we're not quite at that point where we can actually do that, it's part of the announcement, is that's the path we're going. These two platforms are easily the number one in both cloud managed networks and on-prem networking. So having some tie-in between them is natural. With this model, you obviously have the choice between cloud management and on-premise management. My experience with customers is that I often have customers who are using both in different ways, and it really depends on the use case. And I use myself as an example. I know a lot of us are in IT, right? And if you're in IT, then you're supporting your family's networks at their houses too, very often. Help me fix my computer, help me with my network, help me with my wireless. It's very normal. So when we acquired Meraki many years ago, I don't even know how many years it is off the top of my head, we, as Cisco, got trained on it, and I started using it for my own network at home. And if I had a family member call me with to troubleshoot problems on their network, my answer became, I will be happy to help you with your network. You have to submit to my management paradigm. And so I have family members all over the country who have agreed to that, and I send them a Meraki appliance or wireless access points, whatever they happen to need, and I don't get phone calls anymore. And that's great. That's the beauty of the cloud management strategy, is it works really great. I also run a Cisco network at home too. It's my home is my home lab, and I'm very invested in the Cisco, and it's, people ask me which one is better, and I say, well, there is no better. It's about the use case. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about here is, Cisco on-prem tends to be high touch, high need for very detailed features. And from a management perspective, today, for that enterprise networking workload, we're talking about DNA Center. There's a physical appliance today. They're talking about a virtual appliance, as is mentioned on the slide. I don't have dates for that yet, though. On the cloud management side, Meraki's cloud management is very successful. A lot of adoption within the industry, but the feature set that you're given on Meraki versus what you get with Cisco, they're different, and that's because the use case is different. Often with the Cisco on-prem, we're looking at a high number of features and a lot of flexibility. And with the cloud managed version, it's not that you're not flexible, it's just that you get a simpler feature set. Let's see. There we go. All right. For the cloud monitoring for Catalyst, and that's what we're going to talk about primarily, is what's available today is monitoring. So I can bring a Catalyst 9300, 9200, 9500 into the Meraki dashboard, and I can monitor that switch. And the license level gives you the ability to look at the level of detail of traffic analytics, but whether it's Essentials or Advantage DNA licensing, that gives you the ability to use the Meraki dashboard, and you get a unified view of your network infrastructure. You get the device health and troubleshooting, and network client and traffic information. What determines the more important part, and I want to get to that, I'll get to that, I've gone ahead of myself on the slides, is the Advantage licensing will get you a deeper level of traffic analytics. Gives you that, you're used to this. If you're using Meraki right now, you're used to this view. So your Catalyst 9Ks, the 92, 93, 9500s, you can bring those right in, and they'll show up right in here just the way you would expect in that whole topology view, and just be as accessible from a monitoring perspective as your other Meraki cloud gear. You can keep your network healthy and manage it that way. You can put everything on the map the way you do in the dashboard, and it's a great kind of experience from the Meraki side, and being able to use that Cisco hardware to get that in the Meraki dashboard is really brings a lot of the troubleshooting capabilities that are built into the Meraki dashboard that are really cool, right to your fingertips and very easily accessible. You know what's happening on your users. You get the same traffic analytics that you expect in the Meraki switches that you would get with the Catalyst switches. And again, the Advantage versus Essentials is how deep you can go in the traffic analytics, whether you can do like down to the website that you're going to versus the basic network analytics. And what I'm going to show you is basic network analytics. So the sort of supported platforms today, first of all, your iOS XE needs to be 17.3 or better. So the switch I'm running is 17.3 something, I don't remember exactly. Supported platforms are the 9200L, the 9300L and X. So that's including the original 9300 platform and the 9500. And licensing, you DNA Advantage or Essentials. With Essentials, you don't get the application data or the usage data. Cloud monitoring capabilities. Again, I talked about this. You get real-time switch and port health. You get remote monitoring. With DNA Advantage licensing, you get application visibility. You get your network topology, and you get your centralized view of the entire network. This is the slide I was talking ahead about, which is with Essentials, you don't get the traffic analytics. With Advantage, you do. But you still, for both, you get read-only configuration access, so you can look at the configuration of your switches. You can look at all of the clients in your network, and you can go down, you can drill down on a switch-by-switch view and a port-by-port view. You got the troubleshooting tools, and you got firmware tracking, and you got that whole unified topology view. Your telemetry flow is basically what that Cisco switch is going to see. Is it's going to get a configuration snippet that has it start talking to the Meraki dashboard, and we'll go over that when we onboard this switch. It talks via SSH using netconf. It does syslog SNP traps. You can do PCAPs and transfer them over to the Meraki dashboard with SFP. You can upload, or it'll do file uploads with IPFix for application visibility and control, and telemetry data via the netconf and Yang models. And all that happens over a secure TLS tunnel using TCP 443, which makes it easy to get through firewalls. So you don't necessarily have to create a specific rule that's different from what you're already doing with Meraki if you're using it. Architecture use cases, if you've got a tiered architecture, kind of like most people have this. You've got your managed cloud access layer and your cloud monitored core is what we would look at from a architecture perspective. So you've got, when we say cloud monitored, we're talking about traditional Cisco that's been onboarded into the Meraki cloud. And then you can also have centralized monitoring for your Catalyst networks, whether it's got Meraki in there or not. It's not necessary for it to really have, interaction with Meraki to be managed in the Meraki cloud. You can have a completely Catalyst-based network that's specific to, what you're doing on the Cisco on-prem gear, but we're monitoring it in the cloud. And then you've also got Catalyst Campus, this is what I see a lot of, is I got Catalyst Campus with Meraki branches or Meraki remote users, that sort of thing. And so, but that brings my my monitoring paradigm into one single pane of glass. Questions so far? I know that's short. I will be able to provide some links and resources for reference, and we'll go over those after I do the quick demo. So what I'm going to do...
Thanks for providing the license info.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is, and you should still be able to see my screen, right? Yeah.
Oh, Mike, there was a question in chat. Sorry, I missed this. Someone asked, will we be able to use all of the features in Postman, i.e. put, get, post commands that we have with Meraki on the Catalyst as well? Like, do we lock out any of those Postman capabilities?
To my knowledge, no. I might want to go back and ask the Meraki team more specifically that. But since that Postman capability is going up against the cloud and it's not going like directly against the switch, my expectation is the answer is no. There's nothing locked out. It's never been mentioned that that's locked out or anything like that. So anything that you can, from a monitoring perspective, that you can get from the Meraki cloud via the API, my expectation is you'll be able to get it from one of these switches too. But I'm happy to follow up with that and get the answer after the fact. So there's an app that you use to do this onboarding. And this is the app. You can, in the onboarding documentation, it gives you a link to the app. There's a Mac version, there's a Linux version, and there is a Windows version. I'll show you that in just a moment. But first, to use the app, you've actually got to use the API, and you've got to use your API key to enable this app to work. So I'm going to copy my API key and put it in here. So here we should have my API key. Hopefully I got the right one there. Log in. So you log into your dashboard via the API key and you use that. So you've got, it's my home network. That's the one I want to add this switch to. I've got an IP address for the switch. And I'll just show you, this is the switch here. Say just a standard. I thought I had it on 17.3. It turns out I have it on 17.6. I upgraded it yesterday because I was preparing for this, and I put a couple of clients on it, so it's got some data going through it. And so, yeah, it's just a standard 48 port UPoE switch. Nothing much special about it. And I got a username and password. So now this is the switch. First thing I'll do is do the pre-check. There's an onboarding checklist here, and you can see what it is. This tells you what it's supposed to be. So you got, first of all, the requirements, 9200, including the L models, Catalyst 9300, including the L and the newer X models, Catalyst 9500, and then this is a full list of the switches. Here is the document. And I'll make sure everybody gets these lists as at the end. I'll add all these in, and Jason can send them out. So for example, this is the list of the supported Catalyst platforms today, but that's it. So then you've got to get 17.3 or better, as I mentioned, and you've got to have a DNA Essentials or Advantage license. Each switch has got to be onboarded, and this is where the instructions are for that. Upgrade to 17.3, and then a recommended releases for the Catalyst 9Ks today. If you're not familiar with the recommended release documentation, this is not specific to Meraki and using it with Meraki. This is the recommended releases today that based on the software that's out there for the Catalyst 9Ks and the, even the 3850s, 9600s, 9400s. These are the actual recommendations, open bugs. It's the documentation you want to review just in general to make sure you're using supported, known good code, and if it's got open bugs or caveats, however you want to say it, that you know what those are. So, and then it has a revision history. This is a really valuable document for somebody managing a Catalyst-based network. So this is the where those recommendations come from. So if you got an SE that you work with on a regular basis and you're used to asking him, this is where he gets that information, which is readily available to you as well. Back to our regularly scheduled program, you've got to log into your dashboard. You got to get the program, which is the links over here somewhere. And so I've already got that as we were talking about. And I did the start the pre-check to make sure everything is correct. And if you expand that, it tells you exactly what it's going to check. So it's doing authentication, the device is authenticated, it checks the eligibility, device is eligible, and then it checks the configuration. Everything looks good. So if it looks good, we can go forward to assigning it to a network. So which network am I going to assign it to? My home switch network. That's what I'm going to assign it to. Next, and then confirm the configuration changes. So I'm selecting it because we're adding this switch. If I had more switches, these other switches would show up and I would have to select or unselect those. So if we show the actions, this is the actual configuration that it's going to put on the switch. So first it's going to clean up the previous cloud configuration, which I did this yesterday, so it's got an older config. So it's going to take those older settings from yesterday and remove them. And then it's going to do the required services, enable netconf and yang, enable IP routing, enable LLDP for topology and SSH. and then it's going to ensure that it talks to the cloud securely. So it's going to give you a black hole if you can't get to that. Prevent traffic should be in the tunnel from going on the default route. So anything that should be on the tunnel can't go outside the tunnel. So all that information that we're talking about that goes over the TLS tunnel, it can't go outside of that network. And then the AAA configuration, IP access list to define interesting traffic and those other bits. It's also going to put SSH on port 2222 and configure a VTY so that that can be used. It's going to create a local user with a SSH key, and it's going to set up the TLS tunnel for the traffic. And then I click next, and does all that. If we look over here, I got turn on terminal monitor. We can see it's doing all that stuff. Let's watch the progress as it happens. And when it says it's waiting for the device to be available, what that means is that everything's configured now and it's waiting for it to actually talk to the dashboard. So now if I click view, it takes me to my dashboard where it'll show that switch. Now there's, it shows it as, it's good. That's light blue, right? Good. Shows the ports that are active. There's only a couple of ports active. And again, remember, we talked about the tools. That's kind of the thing. The tools, I can see the MAC forwarding table, I can do ping, I can cycle the ports, do things like that. I can look at all the MAC addresses on the switch that it knows about. We can look at the topology, of course. And if I wanted to put a photo in here, I could. If I wanted to put a map in here, I could. We can look at all of the ports and look at their configurations and how everything's behaving there. And then, of course, the summary, go back to that. So it's alerting now. I don't know why it's no telemetry. It's just been put into the dashboard, so telemetry takes a little bit of time to happen. And that's pretty much it. So when I click next here, I'm done. It's done. And wants me to rate it, so I'm going to give it 5 stars. There. That's it. And that is how it works. Any questions about that so far?
Michael, I have a question for you. So if a customer has already their catalyst switches on their DNA, do they want that to be on the Meraki dashboard? Or I'm just trying to understand, is it like, is this solution for the users or for the clients that they don't have DNA and they want to have catalyst on their Meraki dashboard? Or is it just the way that Cisco is pushing this to have all the catalysts to be available on the Meraki dashboard as well, regardless if they are already on the DNA or not?
So I'm going to answer your question a couple with kind of different levels. And so what I'm hearing is, can I have a Cisco switch in both the Meraki dashboard for monitoring as well as in DNA Center? And the answer is yes, for monitoring. And that's probably the only way you would want to have it, because if you were down the road, they're going to enable configuration. And I don't have the specific dates for that, but we're looking at within the next calendar year. So when they do that, I would not want to have a customer to be managing both with DNA Center and the Meraki dashboard, because then I've got 2 automation platforms that are going to compete against each other. But from a monitoring perspective, there's nothing wrong with having 2 systems monitoring one, platform. It's, sometimes the tools between 2 platforms are better. And we often have customers who are monitoring, one network with multiple tools because of the differences between the tools, right? So there's nothing wrong with monitoring with both. DNA assurance on the appliance versus Meraki dashboard monitoring in the cloud. And it can provide different views for the same thing. And you can also do things like the earlier question around using the Meraki API. And, there's DNA Center API too, and you can pull data from that just as the same way that you can pull data from the Meraki API to populate a customized tool that gives maybe your help desk people who might be troubleshooting, taking the calls for troubleshooting network stuff, giving them the ability to get deeper without having to call the level 3 engineer who's on call, for example. Make sense?
Understood. Yes, thank you.
Okay. There's also logs in the application here that shows you everything that was done during the onboarding. So it goes through everything, just as an example. So if you need a log for what you did when you were onboarding, you can use that. I do have also some links. Mentioned that one, so let me put this in the chat. This is the recommended releases, and this is actually in the Meraki documentation. The cloud monitoring onboarding documentation is in the Meraki support documentation. So it's home, cloud monitoring for Catalyst, onboarding, and then how to do it. And I just follow that exact procedure. There's also this, if you've got questions about cloud networking, this is debunking 5 myths about the cloud. It's a good ebook. It's freely available, and we like to send it to folks. Then there is this this blog here, and this is a blog that goes over the announcement that we made back during Cisco Live in more detail and talks about more aspects of it. And I'm going to summarize. It's not just about the switches. It's also about the access points. Those are not available today in the Meraki dashboard from a Cisco access point perspective. But I also mentioned that there's going to be more hardware parity between the two platforms. So the newer, as we come out with new switches in both cloud and Cisco on-prem, those switches are going to be more like each other than less. But the options to run them in either a cloud monitoring situation or an on-prem situation will be a choice you get to make. And the Cisco access points will follow a similar model. There will be some that will be Cisco on-prem only, some that are Meraki cloud-based only, but the flagship access points and the higher end ones, I believe it's the 9166 right now that they're talking about, are going to be able to run in a either cloud-based or Cisco on-prem mode. You'll still, as I understand it today, you'll still need a 9800 controller for that, but you'll be able to connect it to the cloud. If it's a Catalyst 916X series, it can run without as I understand it, without a controller in Meraki mode, and it's a Meraki access point if it's running the Meraki software. And if it's running the Cisco software, it's basically a Cisco access point. The hardware is the same either way. And this goes over that as well. Talks about the choices, talks about the journey. It has a link to a webinar as well, and some other information. Then this is another blog post from later in July where we get into more detail about these. It's a lot like the presentation I gave you, the slides on here, talking about DNA mode versus Meraki mode and monitor versus manage, and a little bit more detail on the access point side and the switch side too, just in general. And talks about the workflow, talks about the supported platforms. So let me provide that link as well. It's a good one. The supported is in the documentation for the Meraki site, so I'm not going to give you that link because it's already in there. And this is the same thing, the overview and FAQ. Any questions?
It's a little bit outside Catalyst and Meraki, but is there any possibility of this extending into the Nexus platform?
That question hasn't come up, and my expectation would be no. The Meraki platform itself is not really a data center platform. I mean, even if we look at the Meraki, let me see if I can get to that real quick. That's documentation. The switches, what we see in these switches are not data center class switches. We see enterprise class access layer switches with some aggregation and kind of core switches.
Yeah, it makes sense. I get it.
Yeah. So, so my expectation is no. And Robert, you could speak more specifically to it.
I can add a little bit of color to that. I personally, I think it'd be really cool if we were able to manage Nexus and Meraki also, right? I think just a nice single platform. What is going to happen, and this is also announced at Cisco Live, and I think we're going to have a speaker on this at some point in the near future, is something called Nexus Cloud, which originally was going to be named Nexus Dashboard as a Service, but no more dashboards here at Cisco. We're not naming anything dashboard anymore, so we're calling it Nexus Cloud. And it's going to take on a lot of the same features that Nexus Dashboard currently offers, right? So a lot of like data operations, insight, stuff like that, right? So that's coming. Look for that around October, November. Does that help, Charlie?
Yeah, it does. It's actually good to hear because we're coming up on 5 years of life on our Nexus, and we're trying to sort out our next move.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to even have a, like, yeah, the Nexus, I wouldn't expect it ever to come into the Meraki cloud. It's just not the same. I mean, if we look at the switch models, it just doesn't work. They're not.
My interest was more from being able to look at something from the Meraki app on my phone while I get a support call while I'm out at dinner.
I understand that. I do get that.
That's coming. Yeah, Nexus Cloud.
All right. Bueno.
Let's see. Nexus Cloud would also be part of Intersect platform, so you can manage compute, data center, network at a single pane of glass. So that's a question in the chat right now. Will Nexus Cloud be part of the Intersect platform? Robert, you might have an answer to that. My expectation is that there will be some integration.
There is. Yeah, there's some integration, and there's a little bit of confusion around this. I think some of the messaging at Live was not. Was a little bit confusing. So what it is, Nexus Cloud runs on Intersect. So the backend engine, basically it's AWS, right? But the backend engine is the same thing that's being used for Intersect. Within Intersect, you'll be able to cross-launch into Nexus Cloud. And it basically shares a lot of the same backend infrastructure, right? But it's not like a direct like you don't open up Intersect and then go directly to Nexus Cloud, that type of stuff, right? So, but same idea, like you would claim the device in Nexus Cloud like you would in Intersect. So similar concepts, but just differently operated. That helps.
Well, Jason, Robert, that's all I have. If there aren't any other questions, that's my presentation.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, we may have a short one tonight. Yeah, Charlie, you're my go-to for questions usually. You've always got some good questions. Anyway.
Well, this has been a winner for me because we have exactly this scenario. I mean, we're running Meraki SD-WAN into our branches, but our branches are all Catalyst 9300s.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly enough, some of those, after the 3-year mandatory license, we didn't renew because we kept waiting for a VM for DNA Center because we couldn't justify the appliance and we couldn't get support for it, or internally. So this at least gives us a reason to go back and renew a license on those cats and get them in and get that visibility.
Yeah. I think this is a no-brainer and an easy win for a lot of people. I have a large real estate customer. They were over the moon about this announcement. They've got a few hundred properties. Some of them are huge, some of them are tiny. And so they've got this mix of Meraki and Catalyst, just depending on the site and what makes sense. And so, same sort of thing. To them, this was a win. They love the Meraki management experience. And so it seemed like a no-brainer. They do have DNA Center, and they love the assurance component of it, for example, especially when it comes to things like troubleshooting wireless. So they're kind of taking that let's get the best of both worlds sort of approach. So, okay. I think that's about it. If you would like a copy of the slides, I should have those up on the scug.net website probably in a little while. Just Mike, when convenient, send them over to me. And then it usually takes about a week to get the video processed and put up onto YouTube. But if you just go check out the LA Networks YouTube channel, it'll be there, yeah, in probably 5 days or so, 5-6 days. Mike, I want to thank you for taking the time to kind of walk us through this. I think I agree with, I've seen several comments in the chat here. This was just a no-brainer. The tagline "Better Together," which I know is kind of how they launched it, it really fits with this one. It just makes a lot of sense, I think, for a lot of people. So thanks for taking the time to walk us through it.
Happy to help. I appreciate the softball.
Okay.
Need help? Call our cybersecurity team and book a consultation with us today.